The final character of Guilty Gear Strive Season 3 dropped recently, Slayer, a fan favorite. The problem? People's opinions on Slayer were way different than Abba's on day one. On day one, people were telling me that Abba was trash, the worst character in the game, worse than Zato, only for people to come around in a week or two and say that she's actually pretty good. So Slayer is the reverse problem. So Slayer, many people were saying he was broken, super strong. So I decided to play Slayer to get a feel for the character and to see if he's this patch's pay to win character. Slayer is actually pretty similar to his prior versions. So on day one, my biggest priority was to see what actually changed and how do you go into some of his iconic moves and strategies. While Twitter was doing their due diligence of seeing how quickly could the new character kill Chip, instead, I was experimenting with how to use his new version of Dandy Step, which is one of his iconic moves from Guilty Gear. Unlike Exerd, he doesn't have an initial strike on Dandy Step, so I was wondering how are you supposed to enforce this move? And I end up settling on structuring my day one pressure around one of his new moves called Master's Hammer. If you do this attack off low blocks on moves, it's pretty easy to counter. But if you use high blocks on moves, which he has a lot of, then he easily hops over most reversal attempts, and the opponent requires some special counterplay to the move. Not saying that there's not options, but a lot of these options would require special counterplay. From there, if their option was to actually try to jump out, I would use its late to force them back to the ground. I don't know about you guys, I always feel like I'm pretty bad at learning combos. It might sound like weird if you watch me play, but I usually add more specific and higher damage combos later into learning a character, and I usually start by learning general strategies and tactics and trying to learn matchups first, because that just makes more sense to me. So I ended up jumping into matches really quickly. My first matches were against a Millia player, and despite at least feeling like I had a big impact on how people play this character, I did find from playing other characters that building strategy against Millia can be pretty hard because of how mobile she is. Generally, the strategy is to not actually chase Millia, and Slayer's pretty decent at this. If you play a high damage character and struggle against Millia, slowing down and trying to attack where she's going to be rather than where she is a pretty good strategy. And thanks to moves like Map the Hunch, I was able to protect space against Millia effectively. I played against some other characters too, like Potemkin. There are actually a few characters in this game where people will say like, hey, you know what? Potemkin's actually pretty good against this character, even in previous patches where he was weaker. And in Guilty Gear history, correct me if I'm wrong, Potemkin vs Slayer was always one of these matchups. But I actually felt pretty comfortable in these first few games. So the main idea, at least from past games, is that since Slayer doesn't really have like a ton of Gatlings, a lot of his stuff are links, that it's really scary for him to just be next to Potemkin. But I don't think it really applies to this version. It was another kind of slow-paced match, but I think Slayer matches up with Potemkin very well. His normals and his movement and playing patiently resulted in an amazing moment like this. I actually wrapped up the first day by playing the same Millia player that I started playing Slayer against, but really the big thing that stood out to me about my first day of playing Slayer was how much I was actually winning. This is a relatively new type of video I've been doing. The first character I really did this with, at least for YouTube, was Abba. And my first day with Abba was not great, despite seeing Division. But Slayer, in comparison, I was racking up win after win after win. And to be honest, this is pretty uncommon on picking up a new character. That, and you have to remember too, that I basically didn't practice combos. I was kind of just doing relatively simple stuff, and his damage output is actually crazy high. For example, and this is probably far from optimal, but this is the type of routing I would use off like a 2H counter hit to get multiple power bunkers. And yeah, it's Millia, but this is a ton of damage, and I wasn't using combos like this yet, so I was really surprised. My second session on Slayer had me up against an Elphelt player to start. This time I felt pretty comfy. I definitely felt like Slayer is positioned to do well against this character. For starters, he has a lot of traveling and active moves like Map the Hunch and 2H. He's also pretty good at hitting her grenade, so not like Exerd, she just has kind of like a ground version of Millia's Capel. And the dangerous thing about this move is that she becomes really small when she does it. So if you block it, then she gets a mix-up, and if you get hit by it, you get a combo. That being said though, he is very good at easily stuffing this move, which is pretty important against Elpo. I also found him pretty good against Rekka. If she does do Rekka, normally she can do tricky highs and fast lows. Pretty annoying to deal with, especially if you don't have a meterless reversal. And he has a slow backdash, so normally she would do really well against his backdash, but he's able to hit her Rekka follow-ups with ease. What if she does one, you might ask? Well, Elpo is faster, for sure, and can play at all ranges really well. I found the match pretty cozy, to be honest. I wrapped up the day playing against one of the true DLC vibe check characters, Sol. And what I mean is, when new characters come out, people tend to actually want to see if the new character does well against established meta characters rather than the entire cast. This makes sense from a competitive perspective. Usually people have a couple of characters out of the top tier that they have as disadvantaged matchups. In my case, as a Viking player, I'm a rare person who is actually pretty comfortable against Sol and Leo, but the trade-off is struggling against characters like Ram, or Sin, or Happy Chaos. So this is one of the main reasons why you'll hear high-level players say the new character is flushed so quickly. They usually just try them against meta characters that they're having problems against rather than the whole cast. So then what's the point of playing them, type of thing. And to be fair, Sol is a big one to worry about. Sol has been consistently performing in this game since release. He has various ways of moving around the screen, even though he's not that fast. And it wouldn't be an LK video without me making up a Sol combo. But even when you don't have optimal combos with him, his damage is pretty high. So you really feel your mistakes. Plus the variety of good defense he has between his fast jab, 3 frame 5k, fast crouching normals, and an invincible reversal. Now, Slayer's damage is high enough to keep up with Sol, and he has great offense and mix-up. The conversion ability felt similar, but to be honest, the main spooky thing to me was Sol's defense for the moment. You would think that DP would be the problem, but at least for this session, it was more about how fast his standing buttons were, like 5k and 5p, and his ability to defend himself and space with fast buttons. So that weekend, I attended DreamHack Dallas. So for the next couple of days, I actually just practiced Slayer. So normally in this week or 2 weeks of playing a character, I'm heavily playing online, but just the way the tournament was kind of formatted, I didn't really have a lot of time to play casual matches. But since Slayer is not a resource character, I actually got to put time into just learning his higher damage combos. And I think the Slayer player base is similar, again, because he doesn't have a resource to manage, so you don't have to answer a bunch of questions around this bar that informs your decisions. And this is a big reason why I felt like people were sleeping on Abba for so long. When I came back, it was time for the inevitable. Slayer Mirror. To be honest, when new characters come out, I actually try to avoid playing the Mirror, even though obviously that's going to be the most common character around. Everyone's trying the new character, seeing if they think they're fun, seeing if they want to play them as a side character, considering them as a main, and seeing where they could fit competitively. I tried to avoid the Mirror so I could see how the character stacks up against the rest of the cast, but I was interested in what type of things people cooked up over the weekend. I myself added a couple of important tactics while practicing and looking through what people were saying about the character. First off was actually about his 6H. So his 6H is a very good -3 on block, considering it's a high block stun move. So it being -3 already means that you don't have to necessarily cancel it into something. You could let it recover. The onus will be on your opponent to do something like instant block or something to keep him closer. And the move is huge. So you can maintain a pretty safe range with it. The other important thing about this move is that when someone blocks it crouching, it has different frame data. Actually, it hits later, so it ends up being 0. So here we have Sol slamming on a 5 frame move. Slayer's 2p is 5 frames, so since Sol is crouching, they trade. So instead of constantly canceling and kind of guessing what they're going to do, you can use this move to assess the situation and follow up in different ways. This led me to big important Slayer thing number 2, which is actually about his 2H and how quickly foot invul activates. So this is 0 as you saw, and Sol's 2k is 5 frames. So the effective 2H is so quick that from relatively close range, you can do 6H into 2H, and if they don't reach, they're kind of screwed. In fact, this even works at point blank range, forcing the opponent to maybe respond with things that they would not respond with normally. You might be like, obviously Sol would respond with his fastest move, but it's a standing attack. So it's much easier to respond with a crouching attack, especially when you're already crouch blocking. You see this come up a lot with people who play characters like Milia, who have a fast 2P. Then, of course, were the new combos. I was pretty sure I'm not going to main him, but still, he might fit in the game in an interesting way where I would consider using him. After all, playing a character of good offense that kills fast in tournaments is great. So I decided to try to learn some more auto-timed Pile Bunker combos. So, for example, this one has one point where you could mess up the loop, but if you do, no matter what, you break the wall because Pile Bunker wall splats right away. And it was a situation that I saw come up a pretty good amount. And another good thing about the combo too is, especially if they don't have burst, despite the wall having damage, you are getting the most damage you can before you break the wall, which I found really valuable. And the last thing was using the punch version of Mappa Hunch. Normally this move is -1, but if you space it properly, you can get some more advantage, which means that you can create new space traps kind of in the same lane as 6H. So these ideas and this day, and honestly, various successes with the character over the day, led me into some of the hardest matches I've actually played with the character, which was against Abba. So the matchup felt okay, if not a bit volatile. These are both Season 3 characters who both have great offense and do a ton of damage. However, Abba's normal mode felt especially oppressive because of her 236k. Abba's 236k in normal mode is -1, and her 2P is 4 frames. Since she has a 4-frame move and a -1 move, you get put in this trap, where Slayer is actually able to clash with the 2P, but then her 2P is faster on clash, so then she wins that exchange. On clash, you have a limited amount of options you can do, and in the moment, I actually was pretty unsure of what to actually do about the situation. After all, Baiken's jab is 4 frames, so when I'm in that situation with Baiken, I just mash. This led to Abba building a ton of resource, and her neutral is very strong in Jealousy Rage. And while Slayer has pretty good moves for covering the screen quickly, the last thing you want to do is take a stray or even randomly block a move from Abba in Jealousy Rage, especially when you don't have a good reversal. The next day, I hopped in trying to find some more ways to sneak in Bite. Slayer's 2S actually vacuums, which means he pulls you towards him. You actually set up a simple strike throw situation by delaying a button or going into Bite. But this is not the only way he can get throws in. Like the other character in the game that cannot dash block, Johnny, he also has the ability to cancel his dash into special moves at the beginning of the move. So this Mappa that whiffs now connects because I dashed and then canceled it. In order to do this, you need to do a quarter circle forward, dash, and then jump and the button. And if you do it properly, you will dash and then do the move. With this idea in mind, we can dash and do grab as well. If you can do this consistently, then you can threaten his command grab off plus on block moves as well. And he has quite a few of them actually. So for example, after 6k, after close slash, after a couple jabs, after a 6H that has no business being even. And then I follow up by playing as another character that tends to shut down DLCs very early, Ramlethal. This is a weird one in that one of Ramlethal's main advantages against a lot of characters is how good her kick buttons are, but I think Slayer is comparable in this regard. So the real struggle was dealing with her sword buttons. But when I connected against the Ram, I would really make her feel it with his high damage output. The next day was Coinbox, a tournament ran by Hungrybox, so it was a Baiken only day. Some unfortunate circumstances happened, and I was DQ'd from the tournament, making my luck with online brackets in Strive this year so far 100% bad. But that's a story for another time. But after the DQ, I still wanted to play, so I decided to play some more Slayer. So my last real question for him before returning to my standard practice was, How is Slayer versus Axel? Axel is a pretty polarizing character from a tournament perspective. He usually either mauls a character or gets rolled over because of the way he's designed. And if you play multiple characters and they all lose to Axel, you probably will end up saying that Axel is pretty broken. And from playing Axel versus Slayer, I definitely feel like Axel has the upper edge, at least from the initial play. While I do a ton of damage and also have ways of spacing out his 2k with 2h, in the end it is really hard to pin him down. This game does have a combo breaker that sends you full screen and knocks you down, so you have to go through the obstacle course again. It turns out not being able to dash block is a terrible thing for fighting Axel. So how do I feel after playing Slayer for 1 week? He feels strong and easy. Playing him actually reminded me that, like, you know, I get a lot of heat for always like horny picking or stuff like that, but they just don't usually make male characters with aesthetics I like. But one of the ones I do like is like cool old guys. So I keep forgetting that I think Slayer is cool because since he could just make himself invincible conveniently, a bunch of memers play him in Exerd. So my memory of fighting him is not a good memory. It's an annoying memory of I have to lock him down with my super strong Okazeme or else I'm going to die from something random. Now, when I played Elphelt, I also said she felt strong and easy initially, but the cracks started to show like a week or two in, mostly around her frame data. For Slayer, I think it's less of an issue about his frame data and definitely more about his neutral. If you have to like scrap with Slayer, I think it's really bad. He definitely out risk rewards like many characters in the game, and he's tanky as well, which has been a theme of things that high-level players have been complaining about. Characters that do a ton of damage, that get better with meter, but then also they have a lot of HP, so they'll get access to that meter even if you're beating them. And not only is he able to scrap wells from a return perspective, but he just has great buttons for mid-range. Buttons like his ridiculously huge 5k, his 2D, his 2H, which again has special properties, 6H to catch jump bounce, and then properly spacing P and K Mappa can give you advantage from farther than you would expect, and it's really fast. But since he can't dash block, characters that are able to protect space well and preemptively seem to give him trouble. The question is, how good will Slayer players get at neutral at dealing with these matchups? I'm pretty sure neutral is going to define where he's going to end up amongst the other characters. Normally, how he would deal with some of these things in neutral would be to apply invincibility using his backdash cancel, but instead he has this now, and the follow-up here has no invincibility, so he actually needs meter to do classic Slayer things. The good news is he does do a ton of damage, and Guilty Gear is 3 out of 5, so you could steal 3 games from somebody before they realize what's going on if you just have to hit him twice. We have plenty of characters like that already. Characters like Nago and Goldlewis and Soul. I do think he's pretty clearly the best Season 3 character as far as the launch goes. As far as who's the actual best Season 3 character, it's between him and Abba, but I think we still need a little more time to tell where Abba's going to go, especially since a lot of people are not playing her in tournaments. Will he be meta? I don't think so. He feels really strong, but the neutral thing is glaring, so he doesn't feel like a blatant top tier. I have been playing Leo Whitefang for the past couple of weeks, and like, you feel it. Like when you play him, you get it if you're good at the game. You're like, dude, like Leo is crazy. Where Slayer has that aspect as far as damage and combos and mix-ups, but neutral is a huge part of the game, and you do have to win neutral to get your offense, usually. So I feel like from a tournament perspective, even if he has a disadvantage match, if you could just slip in like a hit or bait a burst, I feel like he could just take a game really quickly. So I do expect him to see play in tournaments a pretty good amount. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment sections below. Side note, someone told me that I should probably start saying this, but I do stream this game on Twitch. So on Twitch, I play Strive like 5 days a week almost, and we do reaction channels for the second channel, LK Chronicles. You can watch them live when I do them on Twitch and participate in the discussion there. And for the homies who are interested, I also have Metafy for coaching. Right now, pretty much focused on Guilty Gear, Strive for the moment. Also, like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.